Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. My name is Sarmat Meraj and I'm your faculty for Indian Polity. And I promise that you will fall in love with the subject. After attending these lectures, after watching these videos, you might be in a position to win a debate competition in your college or university. After attending these lectures, you will be well placed to argue with your friends on political issues, that too with facts and proper concepts. After watching these videos, you might win an argument with an irritating uncle in your neighborhood. But that should not be the purpose why you should watch and attend these lectures. The purpose should only be to crack the civil services examination, and that too in a single attempt. Yes, after attending these lectures, you might win an argument, you might win a debate, but that should be viewed only as unintended consequence of watching these lectures. The real consequence should be that after attending these lectures, you should be in a position to answer every single MCQ in your prelims examination. After watching these videos, you should be in a position to answer brilliantly all the questions asked in your mains examination. So the ultimate objective should be to crack the civil services examination. Yes, you will fall in love with the subject, and you might assume that now I'm in a better position to argue my own case before the Honorable Supreme Court, but that should never be your intention. That's number one. Number two, you will fall in love with the subject, but that doesn't mean that you should neglect other subjects. Polity is not the only subject that you have to master to crack the civil services examination. There is history, there is geography, there is ethics, there is your optional subject. So you will have to equally devote your time and attention to all the subjects so that you crack the civil services examination. Yes, you will fall in love with the subject, but that doesn't mean you should focus your entire energy and attention towards studying Indian polity. Listen to me carefully. Animal Farm, one of the beautiful novels written by George Orwell. Therein he says and he writes, all animals are equal. But later on he changes his position and says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. For this examination, all subjects are equal, but there are some subjects which are more equal than others. And which are these three subjects that you should focus more on? One is your optional subject, two is your essay, three is your GS paper 4, which is the ethics subject. That doesn't mean you have to neglect GS paper 1, 2, and 3. It only means that if you are strong, if you're very powerful in understanding the concepts related to your optional subject, GS paper 4, and essay, there is no power on earth that can stop you from cracking this examination, that too with a good rank. So these are the three subjects that you have to focus more on, but at the same time, don't neglect other subjects. Indian polity is a fascinating subject. It's a very interesting subject. And I promise to make it even more interesting for you. And I will start from scratch. I will assume that all of you are engineers who have no idea about Indian polity, who have no idea about the Constitution of India, who have no idea about the syllabus of this examination. And we will start from scratch, touching upon the basics. Then we will move a step ahead, then a step ahead. And this is the UPSC level that I will take you to. So we'll start with basics. We'll start from scratch, assuming that you know nothing about the subject. So don't worry. If you have no background in law or polity or political science, doesn't matter. We will together discuss all these concepts so that you are not at a disadvantage. We'll start from scratch. Gradually, we will build on those concepts, and then you will be UPSC CSE ready. So let's get started and look at Indian polity, which is one of the most important subjects for this examination. Why important? Because I teach the subject. But why important? Because of the sheer amount of marks that are allocated to this subject. You would know that the civil services examination is a three-tier examination system. Prelims, followed by main or mains, and then the personality test. And Indian polity is relevant in all the three stages of your examination process, whether it is prelims or mains or the personality test. Let's look at the data. Data from the year 2011. Why 2011? This is when the examination pattern changed. This is when CSAT was introduced in the civil services examination. Then we saw a major revamp in the syllabus of this examination from 2013 onwards. That is why let's look at the statistics from 2011 onwards and look at the amount of marks that have been allocated to Indian polity. Look at the number of questions that have been asked in your prelims examination from Indian polity. And the number ranges. Sometimes 20, sometimes 22, sometimes 15, sometimes 17. Look at 2011. Close to 12 questions were asked from Indian polity in your prelims exam. In 2012, the number jumped to 20. In 2017, the number jumped to 22. In 2021, the number was 17. GS paper 1 of your prelims exam is of 200 marks. And the cutoff varies. Cutoff depends upon the difficulty level of the question paper. Cutoff also depends upon the number of vacancies. If the number of vacancies are less, the cutoff will rise. If the difficulty level of the question paper is high, the cutoff will be low. So cutoff varies. Sometimes 97, sometimes 100, sometimes 105. But if the cutoff is, let's say, 100 marks, and close to 20 or 22 questions are asked from Indian polity, which makes 40 to 44 marks asked from Indian polity. What does that mean? That signifies the importance of the subject. Indian polity is a very interesting subject. I promise to make it even more interesting, but at the same time, it's a very important subject for your prelims exam. Why? Look at the sheer number of marks that have been allocated to the subject. Look at the sheer number of questions that have been asked from Indian polity in your prelims examination. That is what makes Indian polity one of the most important subjects for your prelims examination. For your mains examination, I told you that you don't have to neglect any subject, but you'll have to focus more attention on GS paper 4, essay, and your optional subject. When it comes to mains examination, Indian polity is even more relevant. If you look at GS paper 2, it deals with Indian polity, constitution, it deals with governance, it deals with social justice, it deals with international relations. This part of your video lecture series will focus on Indian polity. For governance, there are separate lectures. For social justice, there are separate lectures. For international relations, there are separate lectures. This lecture series, I will be focusing on Indian polity. And when we look at Indian polity, look at the number of marks. Sometimes 80, sometimes 100, sometimes 120. And you would know GS paper 2 carries 250 marks. Out of 250 marks, which have been allocated to GS paper 2, sometimes 80, sometimes 100, sometimes 120 marks have been allocated to Indian polity. What does this signify? That Indian polity is one of the most important subjects for your mains examination as well, apart from GS paper 4, essay, and your optional subject. Not just GS paper 2, but also your essay. Look at the type and kinds of essay topics that have been asked in the recent years. You will notice that if you are strong in law, if you're strong in constitution, if you are well versed in various fundamental rights that are available to you and me, if you are well versed about the judicial verdicts given by the Honorable Supreme Court, you will be in a better position to cite these fundamental rights, to cite these laws, to cite these judicial verdicts in your essays. And this will surely help you to gather more marks, to obtain more marks in your essay as well. So Indian polity, not only relevant for your prelims, relevant for your mains as well in GS paper 2. Not only in GS paper 2, but in your essay paper as well. Not just in essay paper, also in your personality test. Once you clear the prelims exam, then you are eligible to appear in the mains examination. Once you crack the mains examination, you have to appear before the interview panel. And in the interview, in the personality test, you will be asked questions related to Indian polity. You may be asked about the controversies. For example, what is your take on the hijab controversy? What is your take on the Citizenship Amendment Act? Does Citizenship Amendment Act violate Article 14 of the Constitution? What is secularism? What is the doctrine of the basic structure? What do you mean by Aadhaar? Is Aadhaar against privacy? Does Aadhaar violate right to privacy, which is a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution? So if you're good in Indian polity, you will surely make a mark before the interview panel as well. That is what makes Indian polity one of the most important subjects for your mains examination. So Indian polity is relevant for prelims, for mains, not just in GS paper 2, but also in your essay, as well as in your personality test, which means Indian polity is relevant in all the three tiers of your examination system, whether it is prelims, mains, or the personality test. And I told you, I'll make you fall in love with the subject. But that doesn't mean by attending these lectures, you should focus on winning an argument with your friend, winning a debate competition in your college or university, engaging in a political discussion with your uncles. That should only be treated as unintended consequence. The consequence, and the only consequence that you should focus on, is that by attending these lectures, by watching these videos, I should be able to crack the civil services examination, that too in a single attempt, that too with a good rank. Indian polity, if it is very important to understand, to master, if you want to crack the civil services examination, and we have understood now that Indian polity is significant, is important, because of its relevance in all the three tiers of the examination. But what exactly do we have to study in Indian polity? We have to focus on three important aspects. We have to focus on the Constitution. What is the Constitution of India? And we also have to compare this Constitution with the Constitution of other countries. For example, United States of America. For example, United Kingdom. For example, France. For example, Japan. For example, South Africa. So Constitution of India is one aspect that we will have to focus on. And in the Constitution, we will have to discuss preamble, we'll have to discuss union and its territory, we'll have to see how the states are reorganized in India, how the state can be bifurcated, how two or more states can be merged to create one state. We have to look at citizenship as well. Who is the citizen of India? What are the ways of acquiring Indian citizenship? What are the ways of losing your citizenship as well? We'll have to look at fundamental rights. What is this right to equality? What is this right against discrimination? What is untouchability? What is freedom of speech and expression? What is right to life and personal liberty? What is right to constitutional remedy? What are these religious rights that are available to everybody who is present on the soil of India? We'll have to look at directive principles of state policy. We'll have to look at fundamental duties. We will have to look at institutions such as the Office of the President of India, Vice President, Prime Minister, Council of Ministers. We'll have to look at the Governor, the Chief Minister. We'll have to look at elections, how the elections are conducted in India. We'll have to look at the judiciary. We'll have to look at Panchayati Raj institutions. We'll have to look at various constitutional bodies such as Union Public Service Commission, the central recruiting agency of the Government of India, which conducts this civil services examination that you're all preparing for. So one aspect that we will have to focus on in Indian polity is the Constitution of India, and we'll have to compare this Constitution with the Constitution of other countries as well. The second thing that we'll have to focus on in these lectures are the laws passed by the Parliament. For example, in 2019, a law was passed by the Parliament called Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA 2019. A law was passed by the Parliament before that called Aadhaar. There are discussions that a law will be passed by the Indian Parliament which will raise the minimum legal age of marriage for girls from 18 to 21. A law was passed in the year 2016 on Child Labour Prohibition and Regulation Act of 2016. All these laws passed by the Indian Parliament, relevant for the examination, that is going to be the focus number 2 of these lectures. We don't have to discuss all the laws passed by the Parliament, but only those laws which are important for the civil services examination. So how do I know? Which are these laws which are important for the civil services examination? That is why you have enrolled for this program. That is why you are watching me. That is why you are attending these lectures. I'm going to tell you which are these laws passed by the Indian Parliament which are relevant for the civil services examination. And there will be some laws passed not by the Parliament, but some of the state legislatures in India, some of the states in India. Some of these laws are also important for the civil services examination, and we will focus on those laws as well. So number one, if Indian polity is something that we have to study and discuss, if Indian polity is one of the most important subjects for your examination, but exactly what do we study in Indian polity? We'll have to focus on, number one, the Constitution of India. Number two, the laws passed by the Parliament. And some of the laws, which are very important, passed by some states. That's also going to be our focus. And the third important focus is on judicial verdicts. What did the Supreme Court say in 2015 on freedom of speech and expression? What did the Supreme Court say on how the judges are to be appointed to the Supreme Court and High Court? What did the Supreme Court say on sedition? What did the Supreme Court say on Shabarimala? Should women of all age groups be allowed to enter the sanctum sanctorum of the Shabarimala temple? What did the Supreme Court say on this matter? What did the Supreme Court say on Ayodhya? What did the Supreme Court say on some of the important fundamental rights, on some of the important laws? And what was the interpretation of the Supreme Court on some of the important constitutional articles? That will be focus number 3 of these lectures. So number one, Indian polity is very important. If you have to crack the civil services examination, you cannot and you should not and you must not neglect Indian polity. If it's very important for all the 3 tiers of your examination, then exactly what do we study in Indian polity? We study Constitution. We study the laws passed by the Parliament and some of the important laws passed by the states as well. And the third focus is on the judicial verdicts. Now let's look at the book list. Sir, now we understood that Indian polity is very important. Sir, we also understood that in Indian polity we have to focus on 3 things. But what exactly do we study? What should be the book list that we should refer? Please tell us something about the book list. See, there are lots and lots of books available in the market on Indian polity. There is what some people call the Bible of Indian polity, M. Lakshmikant. Do we study it? So what about NCERTs? So what about D.D. Basu? Should we study D.D. Basu or M. Lakshmikant? Sir, what about the Bear Act? Should we study the Bear Act as well? Sir, what about V.N. Shukla? Sir, what about some of the important blogs or websites such as IndianQanun.org, such as PRS Legislative Research? Sir, what about newspapers? Do we focus on newspapers as well? Long story short, There is a lot of content available in the market in the form of books. Does that mean we will have to focus, or you will have to focus as aspirants on all these books? No. Why? It's a waste of time. Why? Ideally, yes. If you have to master Indian polity, you should study D.D. Basu, B.N. Shukla, M. Lakshmikant, NCRTs, IndianQanun.org, PRS Legislative Research, national newspapers such as the Hindu and the Indian Express. But my dear, Indian polity is not the only subject. You'll have to focus on history as well. You'll have to focus on geography as well, ethics as well, international relations, disaster management, environment and ecology, science and technology, your optional subject, answer writing practice, essay as well. So if for one subject, I'm advising you to go through multiple books, you won't be in a position to complete all these books. So then what is the solution? I'll give you the solution. Attend these lectures, follow these videos. This should be the most important source for your knowledge, for your information. Do not skip these videos. Number one. Number two, go through M. Lakshmikant. But my dear, let me be categorical here. M. Lakshmikant is going to help you only in your prelims exam, not in your mains examination. And I will tell you slightly later why. Just focus on these video lectures, these classes. Focus on M. Lakshmikant and focus on two national newspapers. Which are these two national newspapers that you should focus on? One is the Hindu newspaper and the other is Indian Express. So which edition of these newspapers? Preferably the Delhi edition of these newspapers. Sir, but I'm not from Delhi. How do I access these newspapers? Keep one thing in mind, and this should be your philosophy. If there is a problem, there is always a solution. Whenever in your life or in your studies you encounter a problem, please realize, the first thing that you should realize is, for this problem, there already exists a solution. You just need to open your eyes, open your ears, and find out that solution. There is always a solution. There is no problem in this world which does not have a solution. So what is the solution? E-paper, my dear friends. E-paper of the Hindu newspaper. E-paper of the Indian Express. And these newspaper editions you can read even at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So you don't have to wait for the newspaper wala to deliver newspaper at your doorstep. You can attend, you can read these newspapers, the online edition of these newspapers. All you need to do is subscribe to these newspaper editions, the Daily edition of the Indian Express and the Hindu newspaper. Problem solved. Clear? I can anticipate another question on your mind. So first, should I read the book and then attend your videos? Watch your videos? What should be the strategy? If you are reading the book for the first time, it will become difficult for you to understand M. Lakshmikant, for example. Maybe you are from science background or engineering background or medical science background. You have never read Indian polity. You don't know what is the difference between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. You even don't know who is the president of India. You don't know what is the role, responsibility, power of the Prime Minister of India. Doesn't matter. But if you read book on your own, it will take you a lot of time. So what you should do, first attend these lectures, watch these videos, and then once you have understood these concepts, then revise the same facts and concepts, revise the same topics, revise the same chapters from M. Lakshmikant. So if you have watched a video lecture on preamble, once you're done with that lecture, then revise the same lecture from M. Lakshmikant. So then what is the role of the newspaper? Let's say, for example, you have attended the lectures on fundamental rights. And now you have understood what is this Article 19, Clause 1, Clause A of the Constitution, which deals with freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression, which is a fundamental right. I will tell you later what is a fundamental right. Why are fundamental rights called fundamental? How many fundamental rights do we have? But here, just for the sake of the argument, if you have understood what is freedom of speech and expression by attending these lectures, by watching these videos, then revise the same topic from M. Lakshmikant. And then newspapers. Because in newspapers, there are umpteen stories on the violation of freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression of citizens is getting violated. These rules issued by the government, they violate freedom of speech and expression. The Supreme Court has given a beautiful, brilliant judgment on freedom of speech and expression. Where do we find this? In the newspapers. So attend these lectures first, then read the same chapter, same topic from M. Lakshmikant, and then link it with current affairs. What is happening in India right now? My dear, you have completed the entire syllabus. Just focus on these video lectures, revise the same chapter, topic from M. Lakshmikant, and see if there's a link with current affairs. Every topic that we study has to be linked with current affairs, because current affairs is the most important aspect for your examination. If I were to tell you that it's all about current affairs, this exam is all about current affairs, please don't take this statement as something which is wrong. This exam is all about current affairs. I'll tell you something very honestly, with hand on my heart. If you study all the topics, if you read all the topics that are mentioned in the syllabus and link these topics with current affairs, I promise that you will crack this examination. Sir, can I skip newspaper? No. If you skip newspaper, you will never clear this exam. I'm not saying you may or you may not clear the exam if you skip the newspaper. I'm being categorical. I'm telling you very bluntly. If you skip newspaper, you skip the chance of qualifying this examination. On the contrary, if you focus only on current affairs, if you focus only on newspaper, I guarantee that you will crack this examination. But you cannot understand newspaper unless and until you know the static part. Unless and until you know the concepts behind these newspaper articles. For that, you have to attend these lectures. For that, you have to read M. Lakshmikant. And if possible, if you have time, I know some of you may be very busy with your lives, maybe because of your college or university, maybe because of your job, you're working in a corporate sector where you don't have enough time, you may only have weekends to spare to prepare for this examination. I understand that it will be very difficult for you to read various books, various book lists to follow. For you, if you don't have time, skip everything, just focus on these videos plus Lakshmikant plus newspaper. But if you have time, then please go through these two very beautifully written books, NCRT books of class 11th, Political Theory and Indian Constitution at Work. These are not difficult books to understand. So what is the book list? Long story short, if you have time, focus on these two NCRT books. Sir, what if I don't have time? Don't worry. I'm here to make the task easier for you. But if you have time, these two books, please read. If not, then attend these lectures religiously, follow all these video lectures, plus M. Lakshmikant, plus newspaper. These three things put together, the syllabus is over. And then you have to focus on answer writing. Because prelims is about MCQs. Options will be provided. You just have to pick the right answer or the most appropriate answer. But in mains, you'll have to write descriptive answers. In your essays, you'll have to write essays, descriptive essays. And for that, answer writing is the key. If you know how to structure your answer, there is no reason why you can't clear this exam. So how can you say this? Right now, let's assume that you have just started your preparation. You have no idea about Indian Constitution. You have no idea about fundamental rights. You are confused as to why fundamental rights are called fundamental. And if I tell you, write in 250 words on this topic called freedom of speech and expression, you won't be in a position to write. Maybe you can write 10 words, 50 words, 20 words, 70 words, that's it. But even that won't be to the point answer. But after a few months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, I promise that you will be in a position to write 10 pages on freedom of speech and expression. Here lies the challenge. Now you can write 10 pages on freedom of speech and expression, but UPSC is asking you, write in 250 words, write in 150 words. So whatever knowledge you have, now you have to constrict your knowledge and you have to write to the point answers in 250 words or 150 words. There lies the challenge. So you should be absolutely clear. What is the requirement of this question? Don't write unnecessary details. Don't write irrelevant details. So you have to write to the point answers. And how do you know? How can you master this answer writing? For that, you have to practice. After attending these lectures, we'll also provide you with sets of questions as well. Write answers to these questions, submit to us, we will evaluate, and we will tell you whether your answer is to the point or not. We'll provide you feedback as to how you should have structured your answer, what you should have mentioned, what you should not have mentioned, whether the answer should be in paragraph or the answer should be in point format. All that is something that we are going to tell you, guide you, train you, so that you crack this examination. So number one, Indian polity is a very important subject if you have to crack the civil services examination. Understood? Yes, sir. But sir, what exactly do we have to study in Indian polity? My dear, 3 things. Constitution, the laws passed by the parliament, and some of the important laws passed by the states, and third, judicial verdicts. Okay, sir. This much is clear? Yes. So what about book list? Follow my video lectures, attend these sessions. M. Lakshmikant, revise the same thing that you have studied by attending these lectures, revise from M. Lakshmikant, and then link it with the current affairs by focusing on the Hindu and the Indian Express. So what about other books? D.D. Basu, V.N. Shukla, PRS Legislative Research, IndianQanun.org. Skip. Don't worry. I'm here to pick content from these books, to pick facts from these books, so that you don't have to read these books on your own. I'll do the hard work. You just focus on the class lectures. But if you have time, read these very beautifully written NCRTs of class 11th, Political Theory and Indian Constitution at Work. This is your book list. And then focus on answer writing, because this examination is all about answer writing. Why? Because prelims is elimination test. In the cutoff, for example, in prelims is 105, and you're scoring 106. Doesn't matter whether you score 106 or 199.66, because these marks will not be counted. Prelims is only a qualifying exam. The marks that you score in mains and the marks that you score in personality test, these marks will be added, counted to determine whether you are cracking this exam and what is your rank, what is your all India rank. And if your entire rank is based on the marks that you score in mains examination, because mains examination consists of 1750 marks, 250 each for GS1, 2, 3, 4, which makes it 1000 marks, 250 for your essay, 500 for your optional subject. So your answer writing skills will determine what is the amount of marks that you're scoring out of 1750. So answer writing is the entire thing. You'll have to focus on answer writing, plus 275 marks for your personality test. These marks will be counted to determine whether you're cracking this examination and what is your all India rank. Now let's look at the strategy that you should follow to understand Indian polity for the civil services examination. One is prelims, and then we have mains. Prelims is about 2 things. UPSC will focus on whether you have the factual understanding or not, and whether you have the conceptual clarity or not. In your prelims examination, the UPSC will focus on whether you know the facts, whether you have understood the concepts or not. In mains examination, the focus again is on 2 things. One, UPSC will judge you whether you can elaborate and whether you can analyze what? The same facts and concepts that you've studied for prelims examination. Whether you can analyze the same facts and concepts that you've studied for the prelims examination. So long story short, UPSC will judge your factual understanding, your conceptual clarity when it comes to prelims examination. And in mains examination, the UPSC will focus on whether you can elaborate the facts that you've studied, whether you can analyze the concepts and facts that you've studied for the prelims examination. So what you have to do for Indian polity, you'll have to focus on facts and concepts for prelims, and then elaborate and analyze the same facts and concepts for your mains examination. I'll give you one example so that you can understand what I'm talking about. For example, this is the question which was asked in prelims 2015. Indian polity, one concept called joint sitting of both the houses of Indian Parliament. We discuss in Union Legislature that there are 2 houses of Indian Parliament. Lower house called Lok Sabha, upper house called Rajya Sabha. If a bill is to be passed, for example, a law is to be passed, this law should be passed or this bill should be passed by both houses of the Indian Parliament, Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. What if on this bill there is a deadlock? Deadlock in the sense, Lok Sabha agrees with this bill but Rajya Sabha does not. Or Rajya Sabha agrees with this bill but Lok Sabha does not. Which means on this bill there is a deadlock. Since both the houses, they are not in agreement with this bill. Now how do we resolve this deadlock? The President is empowered that he can call a joint sitting of both the houses of the Indian Parliament. That means this bill on which there was a deadlock. One house agrees, the other house disagrees. Now how do we resolve this deadlock? This bill will be presented before the joint sitting of both the houses. Both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha will have to come together and discuss this bill. Either approve this bill or reject this bill. That is what we call joint sitting of both the houses. UPSC is focusing on one fact, one concept. And UPSC is asking you that when a bill which is referred to this joint sitting, this bill should be passed by what type of majority? We'll discuss slightly later what are the different types of majorities in Indian parliamentary setup. Absolute majority, simple majority, effective majority, special majority. And UPSC is, in prelims examination, focusing on this fact, focusing on this concept, whether you know this or not, that when a bill is presented to this joint sitting of both the houses, what type of majority is required to pass this bill? And the answer is a simple majority of members present and voting. What is the simple majority of members present and voting? We'll discuss slightly later. But here, just keep in mind that UPSC in prelims examination is focusing on this fact, focusing on this concept, whether you know this or not, that when a bill is presented in this joint sitting of both the houses, what type of majority is required to pass this bill? But same subject, polity, same concept, joint sitting, can be asked in your mains examination as well. And this question was asked in mains 2017. What is the question? The Indian Constitution has provisions for holding joint sessions of the two houses of the parliament. Enumerate the occasions when this would normally happen and also the occasions when it cannot, with the reasons as well. That means here, UPSC is asking you to elaborate on this concept of joint sitting of the houses of the Indian parliament and also analyze why is it that in some occasions there cannot be a joint sitting of the two houses. For example, when a constitutional amendment bill is to be passed, this constitutional amendment bill, now what is a constitutional amendment bill? Bill is a proposal. Now the proposal is to amend the constitution. Let's say the proposal is to add another fundamental right. The proposal is to add a directive principle of state policy. The proposal is to add a fundamental duty. To add something in the constitution means amending the constitution. But this bill, this proposal to amend the constitution should be passed by both houses of the Indian parliament separately. That means Lok Sabha has to pass it, Rajya Sabha has to pass it separately. On a constitutional amendment bill, there can be no joint sitting of the houses of Indian parliament. On a money bill also, which we will discuss later, there can be no joint sitting of the parliament. But an ordinary bill, there can be. On a financial bill, there can be. That is what you will have to elaborate while writing this answer for your mains examination, which makes it abundantly clear that what is the strategy that you will have to follow for Indian polity. For prelims, you will have to focus on facts and concepts. And for mains examination, you will have to elaborate the same facts and concepts that you study for prelims and analyze these facts and concepts as well. This should be your strategy for Indian polity. And we will focus on both prelims as well as mains in these lectures, so that these lectures become your one-stop destination for all your requirements for Indian polity. So what have we studied? What have we understood as of now? We looked at that in these lectures, in these video lessons, we'll start from scratch. I'll assume that you have no idea about Indian constitution, no idea about Indian polity. So we'll start from scratch and gradually build on it. Indian polity is very important. Why? Because it is relevant for prelims, mains, in mains relevant for GS paper 2 as well as the essay, and relevant for the personality test as well. If it is so important, then what is the book list? The book list is follow these lectures plus M. Lakshmikant plus national newspapers, the Hindu and the Indian Express. Full stop. But if you have time, focus and read the 2 NCRT books that I've suggested as well. Then what should be the strategy? And the strategy is focus on facts and concepts, elaborate them, analyze them, because this elaboration and analysis is going to help you in your mains examination. And we will focus on both prelims as well as mains examination when it comes to these lectures. But what did I tell you? That Indian polity will have to focus on 3 things: constitution, the laws passed by the parliament, and the judicial verdicts.